Hi everybody, looks like 7 o'clock to me, so let's get started talking about privacy and safety. This is online, of course, not in the real world. Let's go from here. So privacy and safety online. Start by looking at the differences between those two, and then we'll start going through the top social networks: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. And just look at a couple of the things that you can do on those specific social networks to protect yourself there. And of course, at the end, there's some time for some questions. You do need a Google account if you would like to ask a question right now on YouTube. You can sign in, and then you can leave a comment just under the video, whether you're on your desktop or your mobile, it's all the same. If you don't have a Google account or the ability to do that right this second, feel free to tweet a question to us. My Twitter account is Ian Ferguson _. It's IANFERGUSON _, and I'll do my best to get back to you. So starting off with privacy. Privacy is the level of personal data published on the internet. So keep that in mind. It's the level of personal data. Whereas safety is the knowledge of maximizing the user's personal safety against security risks to private information and the property associated with using the internet. What that means to say is, well, in I think a really simple way of explaining it is safety is more the consequences. So you can decide what goes online. That's your privacy and it's your data, and you decide where it goes and who sees it. Whereas safety is the consequence of where that goes and who sees it and what can happen to that data. I hope that very simplistic explanation makes sense. It does in my head. I think it's a nice way to separate the two. So privacy is your data, who sees it and where it is. And safety is more what's happening to it and what are those risks? What are the problems that you might face? And yeah, the risks essentially associated with that data being out there, being what it is and being where it is. So a few best practices we're going to go through. Obviously, we're going to start with the password. It's the classic. It's an easy one to get right. It's also a very easy one to get wrong. So a cup of tea, it's going to take anyone with a bit of desire and a bit of know-how around 35 minutes to get into your account. Chances are, if they can get into one, they can get into a few more, especially if it's your email account. Someone can then begin to reset email passwords for various accounts to the same email address. So a cup of tea is a really bad example of a password. 25 days, if you change a few of those characters to capital letters and numbers, that's a difference of 24 days and 23 hours. It's not bad, and it's definitely worth doing. Here's another example. Chloe likes cats, very weak. Bookshelf 2S178, combination of capital letters, numbers, and symbols in there too. We've got the dollar symbol as well. It's a very strong password. If you feel like you're not going to be able to remember this, then there are some tips for doing that, which I'll come to in just a moment. First being, obviously, don't tell anyone your password. Don't write it down. Don't type it anywhere. Don't save it anywhere. And use different passwords for every website that you use. Obviously, if one gets hacked, then you've significantly increased the chances of all of those social networks or websites or whatever they are being hacked as well. So if you have trouble coming up with a different password for each social network, my advice to you would be to come up with a kind of naming convention. So you could take into account the social network or the website that you're on, your personal name, maybe you're a dog, a maiden, or whatever name, a school, a number, and a symbol. So you could have the first so many letters of your name, followed by this so many letters of the website, followed by the year in reverse or with a character exchange there. Or you could say to yourself, okay, all zeros in my passwords will be this number instead of that letter, and so on and so forth. So you can make a complicated password quite easy for yourself to remember if there's a method behind it. If any of you don't follow my explanation, do let me know. But I think it's a really easy way to remember something that can be quite complicated, especially if you're changing it per social network. Another thing you can do to protect yourself is enable two-factor authentication. This is something that's been enabled by most social media sites, and it's, as it says here, to prevent unwanted people accessing your account. What two-factor authentication is a secondary password on usually a mobile device. So if someone tries to log in, it's going to give you a text with a code, and then you're going to enter that code in the website. So somebody may know your password to get on Facebook, let's say, and they might get that far, but then Facebook's going to send a text to your mobile phone, which is going to A, alert you that someone's getting in, if it's someone unwanted, or B, allow you to access Facebook. It's not a great inconvenience, and it's very well worth doing. There are some things in place in most of the social networks and websites, and I would encourage you to set them up. Okay, so moving on to your personal information. I suppose it goes without saying, don't put your personal information on social media. However, sure, that's a bit of common sense, but you can do this without knowing, which is quite common, and I'll explain how that happens. Firstly, it's your location. It's going to be a huge one. For example, Emma Watson, Harry Potter actress who played Hermione, doesn't allow any images of her to be taken with fans, because she knows that within a few seconds of her taking that picture with a fan, it's going to be on social media. Her location will be tagged, and then people and press can know exactly where she is. It's an extreme example, but it's a great example of someone who is well aware of the consequences of your location being on everything. So, location services in your phone. This is an iPhone. I don't use an Android myself, but I imagine it's fairly similar. Go into your location services, and you can choose every application that has access to your location and work out whether that application really needs access to your location. Because every time you give it that info, it's saving it. And when you publish that information and share it, quite often it's part of the data shared on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. It's going to add a location to your tweet. You could do that if you want, but there is a consequence, and that's the safety part. The third screenshot along that says system services. This is less about privacy and safety, more just about saving your battery, to be honest. You'll see a few things here that are all green. Not all of those need to be green. Neither does your frequent locations. These are settings that enable Apple to send and sell your data to others based on your location, and serve you ads based on your location. They use your battery because they're constantly sending information to Apple about where you are. My advice would be to turn a few of them off, so you're only using the necessary settings. I hope that makes sense. Again, if you've got a question, fire it over, put it in the comments on YouTube, or send it to me on Twitter at @IanFerguson_, and I'll do my best to answer. So, a few things here. Identity fraud, phishing scams, and meeting up. We're not going to really touch on meeting up today. So, identity fraud, first up. Someone online can pretend to be you. All they need is simple information such as your name and address. It's quite amazing how much information I can ascertain about you just from your name and perhaps a city or a phone number or an email address. You're very, very searchable, and there are websites out there to help you do this. Just by putting a phone number in a mobile phone or an email address, any social account you have associated with that address can be found if I have the same app. From that, I can begin to find out usernames and names, email addresses, locations. I can find out your LinkedIn. I can get so much information about you and build up a real profile, which can help people break passwords. So that shows you how easy identity fraud is. Phishing scams are sensitive sensitive information that is usually taken from you and extracted by email. So you'll get an email that looks legit, or a link perhaps on a social network that looks legit, but actually it's a mock-up, it's a fake, and it's deceiving, and it's getting your information for malicious reasons. Things that should never go on social media: banking details, pictures of passports and mobile numbers, dates of birth and addresses. They may seem fairly obvious, but again, they happen all the time. If you search for somebody going on holiday on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, I'm sure you've always seen the classic photo of them holding their boarding pass. There are cases of people logging into the airline's website and cancelling the boarding and the ticket from the information that has been shared on the boarding pass alone. You can get a lot of information from that. So be aware when you're sharing those images. Cover all personal details, logins, and numbers. You may be very excited to share an image of your work computer or something made perhaps in front of it, but little do you know behind it, in the background, there's your full email list, personal data about the company, things on the desk around it. It's very, very easy to do and very, very easy to get. People can pause images, pause videos, pause Instagram stories and Snapchats, clean up images and get blurred text out of it. And then that's your personal information. So be very, very aware of things that you're doing with your personal info. A good rule of thumb is to not give any information away on social media that you wouldn't give to a stranger in the street. You know, you wouldn't give your date of birth to a stranger in the street. So why would you share on social media? You know, it's a rule of thumb. You may have your own reasons to share more or less. I look forward to reading them. Please leave a comment on what you think about that particular rule of thumb. Speaking about Facebook in particular, there's a tool that you can access when you're logged into Facebook where you can see all other devices that are using your Facebook account. In this case, there's a phone and a MacBook logged into this particular Facebook account where we've taken the screenshot from. You can log out of other devices whilst not using the device. For example, I'm logged here on a Mac, and I could log out that phone in London if I wanted to. Excuse me. So you can really choose who's logged into your account and make sure no one or no other device has access to your account that shouldn't. Big stat for you there. Over 1.2 billion use Facebook every day, making it the largest social media platform in the world. Average user has 229 friends on Facebook. The average one of those doesn't know 7% of them. Quite a lot. That's 16 people on average. These strangers can often see who your other friends are, some of your photos, videos, and sometimes your location, date of birth. Again, please take this opportunity to have a look through your friends list and see who needs to be there. Let's try and bring that average down by doing a privacy checkup. This is a screenshot from a mobile version of Facebook. Facebook does change how this looks fairly regularly, so there may be some slight variations, but you get the idea of how to find it by heading to Privacy Shortcuts and Privacy Checkup. It's a very simple way that it lets you reevaluate, I suppose, what you're sharing, who you're sharing it with. These are some apps that have had permission to use a Facebook account. Again, you can double check whether you want these apps to be having access to your personal data and what you want to do about that. You can remove them very easily by just hitting the X there. phone number, email address, birthday, and your hometown. Again, here you can remove things, make things public, or make things visible to only your friends. Very easy and simple to do. Just takes a few minutes. Well worth doing. Moving on to Twitter. Twitter is a very different social network to Facebook in terms of how it's used and how people share things. You can do here, and that is to hit the protect my tweets. There is a consequence of this, of course, is that people cannot find your tweets and you cannot be engaged with if you're using hashtags and things like that. It's not all that common Twitter users to work in this way. Especially if you're an active tweeter. As I said, it's a very different social network to Facebook, and I suspect that things that you're sharing on there are very different. And also the people that are following you, i.e. your friends versus friends on Facebook versus your followers on Twitter, are going to be quite different. People use it for very different reasons. So it's something to consider when thinking about privacy on Twitter. But again, you can also share your date of birth and location on there. Do you want to share that? Have a look. Finally, Instagram. Similarly to Twitter, there's not a whole lot you can do on there, apart from slide this little icon to make it a private account that's found in your account settings. Instagram's a much more private social network for a lot of people in comparison to Twitter. And the people on there are more likely to be similar people to Facebook than similar people to Twitter, I think. And you, again, will be sharing different things to what you share on Twitter and different things to what you share on Facebook. Instagram is a very popular one. It's a social network where location sharing is very common, and it's a real-time social network. There's a lot of live things on there, including the Instagram stories, and it's something that can tell people instantly where you are, and that's something to be very aware of when sharing your location. To hide your story from particular people, these are the settings to do that. Is a very user-friendly application, and I'm sure you won't have too much trouble figuring this out for yourselves. But I've written it out here for you guys. Finally, Snapchat has a very particular user base, very young. We won't spend too long on it. It's a little video here. I'm just going to leave that playing a couple of times so you can see exactly what screens it's going through. And then if you want, you can bring Snapchat up yourself on your own phone. This setting is changing exactly who can contact you and view your story in your Snapchat settings. Find your friends, a recent addition to Snapchat. As of a few months ago, people can see where you are in real time. It's constantly using your location. Not great for the battery life, not great for privacy either. You should have a look at that. You can change that by following the instructions there and selecting only me, i.e. ghost mode. Text on Snapchat isn't saved automatically, but can be. And although images disappear from your phone, they don't disappear from servers. They can be used and retrieved if necessary. So that's something else to bear in mind there. I hope that makes sense. We did fly over Snapchat, but I don't suspect too many people who are watching this are using Snapchat. But do let me know if you've got any further questions about anything you've seen in the presentation. If there's no questions, you can hit me up on Twitter, IanFerguson_ if you're watching this at a later date. Otherwise, I will bid you farewell. Have a lovely evening.